From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I am your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast is Andre Johnson
Jr.
Do not forget the JR at the end of the name. It's very important to remember the Junior. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, and review. If you are watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button to get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. And if you're watching on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, hi, thanks for joining us. Glad to be here. Glad you found us on our new network that we're having a whole lot of fun being on. Okay, today is Wednesday, hump day, not a normal Wednesday because it is basically a Friday, the day before, I guess 2 days before a game, but it's a day before a game. I don't know what you call it. It's a hybrid Thursday, Friday. Let's just call it that way. But it's actually Wednesday. Why? You know why. The Saints play on Thursday against the Denver Broncos. There's a whole lot going into this matchup that we could talk about, and we'll get to it. But it's a short week, and there was a lot of things that happened between the end of last game and today that we haven't had a chance to talk about. So we're going to get to that, in particular from the Saints general manager, Mickey Loomis, comments that he made. We're going to get into that. But first and foremost, how you feeling on this Wednesday?
I'm feeling good, Sean. You know, it's cool outside.
Feels awesome outside.
I had to, I stepped outside and I was like, oh, I'm not sweating, but it's not so cold that I got to put like a thick hoodie on or something. So it feels good outside. I was actually just in here last night / this morning, me and Madeline Adams dropping a Pelicans podcast, adding to our wonderful coverage here on this channel.
It's a lot of content coming for you. So be sure to check us out wherever you get your podcasts, and especially on that Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. So, Saints Broncos, Mickey Loomis does I don't know if it was Monday or Tuesday, interview with WWL Radio. We're not going to be able to play that sound just for rights and that sort of stuff. We're just gonna basically get into what he said, and that's where we're gonna go with the big picture today.
Right. Mickey Loomis saying, quote, "Everything you said is accurate. Results matter. They do. But I think one of the things that good organizations do is you look beyond the results. What's the reason for the results? How do you fix the reasons that keep you from winning? It's not always about the head coach. Sometimes it is. It's about a lot of different variables. A lot of things are involved in winning a particular game or a lot during the season. So we're going to look at that when the time comes, but the time is not right now. We have a lot of games left. We have a talented team, and we'll see where it goes from here." Now, Sean, there was one sentence in there that bothered a lot of Saints fans over the last few days. That sentence being, look beyond the results.
Good organizations look beyond. Is that right?
That's what he said, yeah.
And in fairness, that was an interview with Bobby Hebert and Mike Hoss. And it was about an 18, 19-minute interview. And that was the very last question Bobby Hebert posed, and only a way Bobby Hebert can pose it, in terms of status of head coach and just bottom line business and 2-4, it is what it is type question. And that was Mickey's response. And again, he said a lot of stuff in that interview, and I encourage y'all to go check it out. And we're going to reference some of that in here today. But let's just get started with that. Why don't we do that? Okay, like you said, good organizations look beyond the results. Look, it upset a lot in the fan base, and a lot of people covering the team, and not necessarily people covering the team, but people that do media that may necessarily cover the team, may not necessarily cover the team every day. But to me, that tells me all I need to know. First off, did y'all really expect Loomis to throw Dennis Allen under the bus? I mean, this is a man that once compared him to Bill Belichick in a press conference, an awkward press conference. Did y'all really expect him to throw him under the bus? Come on now. No way, never going to happen. It's going to take a whole lot more than a 2-4 record in the middle of October for Loomis to publicly trash the coach, like I said, who we once compared to one of the game's greatest in Bill. There was other names he named. Y'all remember that press conference, okay? And it's going to take even more than that to do what I know a lot of y'all, just based off everything y'all have been sending at me, based off everything I post or any content we produce. Your reaction has been a lot of fire DA, fire DA, fire DA. But it's going to take a whole lot more than 2-4 in the middle of October to publicly trash DA. It's going to take a whole lot more than that to fire him during the season. I think it would have to get like 2-10, 2-11 type situation. Loomis is calculated in his response. I went back and I tried to get a feel for the tone of that interview. He had some energy. It wasn't like he was just giving scripted, non-answers. I mean, he was conversational, but he's calculated. He always is. We've accused him of the past of being the guy that knows how to talk and say nothing. But he said some stuff, but that doesn't mean he can't come across as tone deaf. And it's certainly happened before. But back to the actual quote. Beyond the results, what are the reasons for the results, I believe is what he said.
Yes.
Why does that tell me all I need to know? Well, a couple things. One, not only are they firmly behind head coach Dennis Allen, I think this organization truly believes in 2024 as they currently stand here right now. The reasons they are not having success is the abundance of injuries, period. Not coaching or play calling or age or bad execution. They feel like, and Mickey said as much in the entire interview, when they are healthy, they're a playoff team. When they are healthy, they are more like the team we saw in the first 2 weeks. That is where the organizational mindset is right now. To them, it's simply a matter of getting healthy. Let me just plainly state, while health helps, of course, it is incredibly short-sighted to assume that everything will be okay once they get healthy. One, there is no such thing as perfect health in the NFL. Now, obviously, it's as bad as it's been a while here this year, but waiting for utopia in the health department is just not smart because it never arrives. Never, ever, ever, ever arrives. Ask any NFL player, you are never 100% healthy. Mickey understands this more than anyone. He gets that. He knows that. Two, let's just say for the sake of the argument, you get the majority of these guys back in a relatively short amount of time. Core pieces that have been out. And they come back within the next week, 2, week 3, 2, 3, 4 weeks. And in a time where you can somehow have a lot of the season left. Well, you better hope you're not too far in a hole to dig themselves out of it. That's number one. And number two, you don't just pick up where you left off just because all the guys are back. The tape always catches up. Other teams have grown from those first 2 weeks of the season. A lot of teams, early in the season, they're one team. They figure out who they are, and they're a different team by week 8, week 9. That's what we're talking about. We talk about some of these guys coming back. That's where you're going to be in the season, that middle bridge part of the season. And 3, essentially pinning everything on health ignores the fact that part of the reason why you can't overcome it is the lack of depth, which frankly Loomis and the front office are responsible for obtaining because of their organizational approach. We've talked about this. The salary cap construction, their draft approach, the constantly trading up draft approach, their prototypes, and obviously free agent acquisitions where you're choosing to spend money on certain guys and choosing to let other players walk. If you make wrong decisions in those different buckets, it can impact your depth. And I think you're seeing that manifest itself right now. You know how many teams in the NFL would say, as soon as we're 100% healthy, we're going to be the best team in the NFL. We're going to be really, really good. Yep. Every team's going to say that. Every team's going to say that. Now, in saying that, I do feel like 17 is a lot. 17 injuries. Not all hurt, but 17 guys on an injury report is a lot. So I think what the bottom line is this, and I listened to the whole interview, and I know you did as well. I think overall, Loomis wanted to present a picture of, hey, we may be frustrated, but we're optimistic of what's to come because of what could potentially happen down the road when we get our players back. I can understand as GM of a team, you wanting to present a layer of optimism. I mean, he can't go out and say, God, I don't know what we're going to do. Season's done. I got a coach that knows what he's doing. I got a quarterback that's hurt. I got the offensive coordinator I paid. He's not going to do that. He made all these decisions. But the flip side of that, he has to understand, this is where the frustration comes in. He has to understand that a little bit of that what the fan base wants to hear, or the message that they want to hear, not a gloom and doom type situation, but more of a direct little bit of what I saw was unacceptable. And it is not Saints football. And we will get it fixed, or we will find some people who can get it fixed. a deliberate, direct, not throwing anybody on the bus, but sending everybody a signal. We need to get this thing up and going. A little sense of urgency here, guys. And instead, it was more of a, we're okay. When we get healthy, we're going to be fine. It's not time to panic, but we're going to be fine. I think turn up the heat a little bit just to kind of match the fan base's frustration right now, I think would have been a little bit better approach for Loomis in an interview.
I agree, because I think what a lot of fans were looking for in that moment, listening to their general manager, was accountability. Mm-hmm. You want to hear accountability. You don't want to hear a guy trying to do what, to me, came across as damage control for a team that has underperformed compared to the bar that you set in those first 2 weeks. And when I heard those comments, the first thing I thought was, man, read the room. Read the room. Your team is on a 4-game losing streak. Could go to 5 on Thursday potentially, which would be their longest losing streak in 3 years since 2021. You've got injuries all over the roster. You've got your head coach on maybe the hottest seat in the entire NFL. And you've got a frustrated fan base. Yep. And the last thing that your frustrated fan base wants to hear during a 4-game losing streak is, well, we got to look beyond the results. Mm-hmm. The results matter.
Of course they do.
Right. You played to win the game. Yes. Hello. Results are what create dynasties. Results are what create Hall of Famers. Mm-hmm. Results are what made the New Orleans Saints into one of the premier franchises in the NFL about a decade or so ago, when Drew Brees and Sean Payton were hoisting up the Lombardi Trophy. And results are also what gets players cut, what gets players traded, what gets coaches fired, and potentially what gets general managers fired. The results matter in organizations. Everybody in that Saints building, from the social media coordinators to the head coach and the general manager, everybody in the building, their jobs are based on results. Mm-hmm. So nobody wants to hear when your team is 2-4, oh, well, we got to look beyond the results, especially because those results, I mean, when you look at, if you do look beyond the results and look how you got there, like you said, it's a result of this team's lack of depth, especially on offense. It's a result of this coaching gaps. I mean, when your team isn't tackling well and your head coach is a defensive guy, I mean, you've got the last defense in the NFL. You're 32nd in total defense. So if I'm looking beyond the results, that just leads me straight back to the results, which haven't been good.
Right. And, I like the way direction you took that there, because you basically just went, results do matter. Of course they matter. Like, looking beyond the results, of course, everyone has to look beyond the results. Everyone has to know. You can't just say, oh, they lost today, let's move on. Like, you've got to see what you did wrong. And in the process of figuring out what you did wrong, there needs to be some sort of accountability or some sort of recognition of what has to change to get the results that you want. No one, and honestly, I know that a lot of the fan bases are calling for the firing of DA. No one covering the team has called for that. Yeah. Okay? No one has. And honestly, I don't think it's gotten to the point of where, as much as I know this organization, they're not going to pull the plug after a 2-4 start. They're so, like, they don't do that. They just don't. It would have to get absolutely terrible. And B, you've got some games coming up, and maybe you can maybe catch some fire here, get a little hot, and maybe you can go on a mini run. But to me, when I listened to those comments and I kind of listened to them over again, and it just really felt like, okay, health. Because when he's saying beyond the results, they're basically saying, well, we're not winning because we're injured. Yeah. We have too many injuries to overcome. We got to weather this storm, and when we're healthy, we're good. But like I've said many times, if you poll the 31 teams that do not win a Super Bowl every single year, all 31 in their top 5 reasons why they didn't win a Super Bowl, every single one of those teams will have health in that top 5. That's the game you play. That's what you have to be willing to overcome. That's what you have to be able to overcome. That's why it is so freaking hard to win in the NFL. And just assume that once they get healthy, yes, I agree, they will be better when they get healthy. But to kind of assume that that's the only... I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it certainly feels like there's a layer of optimism based off health that can come across as a little bit, not a little, that can come across as tone deaf because, like I said, utopia and health department doesn't exist. And frankly, just because you get healthier at some point in the season, you could be so far in a hole that you can't dig yourself out of. And B, you don't just pick off where you left off. Every team has game film. Every team has gotten better. There's new adjustments, all kind of things. So I just think it was he had a chance to kind of resonate with the fan base. I hear you, and it's not acceptable, and we are going to get this thing fixed. Stick with us, I promise you. Instead, it felt more of a kind of softening the blow of, hey, we are going to be okay because we have all these factors we can't control. I don't know if they presented the right message.
Definitely, especially when you're the guy who is responsible for building depth. Because like you said, the other 31 teams in the league, if they hear you talking about that, they're going to say, well, that's an excuse. Mm-hmm. Everybody's hurt. The 49ers lost their best player in Christian McCaffrey at the start of the season.
They hadn't played a game yet.
And you've heard the term next man up. Mm-hmm. It was next man up over there. Jordan Mason comes in, and he's been one of the best running backs so far in the league over there in San Francisco. They're 3-3 right now. You talk about, he said, what was the quote? He said, one thing that the good organizations do is look beyond the results. Okay, well, the best organization in the league over the last 5 years, Kansas City Chiefs, they brought in Hollywood Brown, injured. Rashee Rice, star young receiver, injured. Isaiah Pacheco, star running back, up and coming, injured. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a first-round pick from a couple years ago that they brought in to be one of their premier backs. He's been on the injury report. I believe he just got off this week. Like, that's a team that has gone through so many offensive injuries, but they're built in a way, drafting a talented rookie like Xavier Worthy, having a lot of depth at that tight end position, having running backs, bringing in Kareem Hunt, a guy who was in street clothes 3 weeks ago. And of course they have the best quarterback in the league.
Right,
but
they got the man.
Still, you got to surround him with something, and they've done a good job living up to that next man up saying. So when you're the general manager who's responsible for the fact that, well, behind Derek Carr are two unproven rookies. Behind Alvin Kamara is Jamal Williams, who hasn't had that spark in a while, and Kendre Miller, who you drafted, who hasn't been healthy since essentially you drafted him. You've got a bunch of young, unproven wide receivers behind Olave and Shaheed. You don't have much depth at tight end, zero depth on the offensive line. That's the team you built.
Yeah, and it's you inherited anything. This has been your show for quite some time.
Yeah.
And that's why, look, I alluded to it last week or on Monday. I know y'all are on the fire DA kick, but if this thing really falls apart, that's why I think it's organizational. I think it needs to go higher up the food chain, some sort of significant changes. But look, one thing I do agree with, there is still a long way to go. They are only 2-4, and as much as it's been gloom and doom the last couple of weeks, 4-game losing streaks do that to you. They do have a very winnable game on Thursday, but they will be banged up on Thursday, which is why I wanted you to get to the injury report. They got the official. Do you have it? The official injury report here? Because there are some interesting names on there that I want to talk about, both good and bad.
Yeah, there are 4 players that have been ruled out as of Wednesday. Those players being offensive lineman Cesar Ruiz, linebacker Pete Werner, wide receiver Rashid Shaheed, and wide receiver Chris Olave. We'll get to both of those in a second. Doubtful, tight end Taysom Hill, quarterback Derek Carr. Questionable for this game, offensive lineman Lucas Patrick, and defensive tackle who just popped up on the injury report today, Colin Saunders. Now, some of the names popping up on that list from out last week for sure to doubtful would be Taysom Hill and Derek Carr. Another name that Dennis Allen talked about today, Rashid Shaheed, who he says he believes has a meniscus injury and is going to L.A. to get surgery, and he could potentially go on injured reserve, which would put him out for the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, well, let's start with the good, because we've been crushing y'all with bad. Let's start with the good. Look, Taysom was limited all week, so he's officially doubtful. But sounds to me like he's getting closer and closer to where this mini bye will certainly help him. Derek Carr being listed as doubtful was a total shock to me because we haven't seen him out there. But DA said today that it's less week to week. Now we're in the phase of day to day, which I think is good. because he's the one that's going to battle to come back quickly, and this mini bye might help him. So I'm looking at maybe at the absolute most he would be out for one more game. And I think he would probably be back for the who do they play after LA? Is it
the Chargers and then Carolina?
Yeah, I believe so. It's LA, then the Chargers. LA, then the Panthers. Yeah. So he could be back for that. That's great news because I just think, I've already made my statements clear. Who I think when he's back, it's his show. And in Taysom Hill, we already know. I've said it so many times. Just look at the games with him and without him, and just how much better it feels like from a overall execution standpoint and just a play calling standpoint. Now, Rashid Shaheed has me concerned because I don't even remember the play he got hurt on. I mean, we've tried to look at the video. I think he finished the game. I don't remember him. I don't remember him getting hurt. And sometimes the meniscus can be like that. And they're just trying to. He's going to LA to get the surgery, and they're trying to determine the severity to see how long he'll be out. So, if he's a candidate for IR, that's at least a month. But you're talking about a torn meniscus, or if it's big enough to where he's got to get the major surgery, there's a strong chance you will not have Rashid Shaheed ready for the season or for the rest of the season. But there's also a chance he could come back. So I guess we'll find out over the next couple of days. Chris Olave going down with the concussion, which we all knew was probably going to happen with the short week, is certainly not what you want to hear for a rookie quarterback who will now have Bub Means, Mason Tipton, Cedric Wilson. Who do you have next? Do you bring up Equimania St. Brown? Do you bring up is it Dante? Who's the guy they signed to the practice squad? Is it Dante Pettis? Yeah, they signed him to the
It'd be cool if you had A.T. Perry still around.
They don't have A.T. Perry.
He's in Denver now.
So my point to you is, I mean, some of these pieces look like the third preseason game. The Mason. Well, Tipton didn't play the preseason, but Tipton. I mean, Cedric Wilson's a veteran, but you talk about Bub Means. Yep. So you're talking about some guys that are getting some run here that played in the preseason game for a rookie quarterback making a second start. But you made the point last week or last pod, and I think it's a good one. This is the guys he's been with the whole time. So those are the guys he got the most reps with. So those are the guys that could certainly help him when he's playing. But I do fear that a very thin group at the wide receiver position just could be even thinner now that Rashid Shaheed could be out for an extended period of time.
Right, and it's also worth mentioning that Pat Surtain, the star cornerback for the Denver Broncos, the DB, he's also going to miss this game. Not that you need him to, typically maybe you throw him against Chris Olave, but, I mean, you've mentioned the mini-bye, the 10 days that are between this Thursday night game and the next Sunday game for the Saints. There's a lot that can happen between those 10 games when you look at these injuries. Number one, Lucas Patrick coming back. Number two, a guy who we haven't seen since Philadelphia, Cesar Ruiz, coming back would be a huge jolt. Yeah. Taysom Hill, you see he's on his way back, having a week and a half to rest and heal. You would hope could get Taysom Hill back in this offense and unlock something that they've really been missing over the last few weeks. Chris Olave, you never really know with a concussion.
Yeah, he's had a few too.
Exactly. It's not his first concussion at all, but you knew when he went down Sunday with a concussion, there was virtually no chance he'd be cleared by Thursday. Hopefully with a week and a half, he's okay. You can at least get Chris Olave out there because, like you said, we've both explained in depth how we feel about Spencer Rattler, but you got to help the guy.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to help him to some degree. And I get that, he's probably had more reps with Bub Means and St. Brown and Wilson and Tipton than he's had with Olave and Shaheed and all of those guys. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to get open. Somebody's going to have to create separation. Somebody's going to have to get deep. The Saints offense has thrived off the play action, lift your head up, launch that thing deep, and that guy more often than not has been Rashid Shaheed.
That's been their play.
Yeah, who's that guy now? Is it Mason? It's got to be Mason Tipton because Bub Means isn't a burner. St. Brown isn't a burner. Cedric Wilson isn't a burner. The only guy with real speed on the offense at this point is probably Tipton.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I think it's time for him. I mean, they've showed a lot of faith in him, despite not getting a whole lot from him in training camp and preseason, to keep him on the roster and maybe playing the Rashid Shaheed role is more suited to his strengths as opposed to doing kind of the underneath type stuff. But I don't see how the Saints can realistically go through the rest of the season without signing someone, figuring out. They've got to address that position. Some kind of veteran. I don't know who's available, but and then they obviously they swung and missed on Devontae Adams. Different topic for a different day. I didn't even realize Amari Cooper was available. That seems like a very good trade for the
for a third round
for the Buffalo Bills. They've got to address that position. They still have enough. They don't have enough quality playmakers, and I think Vance Joseph is going to test them. I think they're going to play some man coverage, see if they can beat the one-on-ones. I think there's going to be a situation where they're going to challenge those guys. So it's time for a guy like Mason Tipton. I really like what Bub Means did last week, and I think he's earned his opportunity. And I think when Olave's back and Carr's back and all those guys are back, I could certainly see him being more into the mix. But it's time for some of these young guys to step up. We'll see what happens with the tight ends. I think Jawan Johnson had a pretty good game last week. And who's had a sneaky good year, we haven't really talked much about, is Foster. Foster's had a good year this year, catching the ball, blocking, all those things. So matchup-wise, we didn't even get into the game. We only got about 40 seconds here. I'll just say this. I'm expecting an ugly game. I really am, because I'm expecting a low-scoring game. Bo Nix is a runner. He's a little erratic in the pocket. You're starting a rookie as well. The Saints are. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sean Payton has had a history of terrible Thursday night games. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a low-scoring, ugly game. If you're the Saints, just figure out a way to win.
Yep, and one guy we did not mention today, ironically, Alvin Kamara. And boy, do I feel bad for AK, because with all those weapons out, you've got 4 of your top 5 playmakers out the game. You're going to have to lean heavily on AK. And the guy I've mentioned in each of the last 3 podcasts, Kendre Miller. He's finally off the injury report. He should play.
Yeah.
Kendre Miller, please take some work off AK's plate, because he needs it.
I mean, look, it's there for you. I mean, it's such an opportunity. Please take advantage. Not only will it help you, it will help the team. All right, that does it for us. For Andre Johnson Jr., I'm Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.